We have a report today, the global death rate at 3.4%, and a report that the Olympics could be delayed. Your reaction to that?
Well, I think the 3.4% is really a false number. Now, this is just my hunch, but based on a lot of conversations with a lot of people that do this, because a lot of people will have this, and it's very mild. They'll get better very rapidly. They don't even see a doctor. They don't even call a doctor. So if, we have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work, some of them go to work, but they get better. And then when you do have a death, like you've had in the state of Washington, like you had one in California, I believe you had one in New York, all of a sudden it seems like 3 or 4%, which is a very high number, as opposed to a fraction of 1%.
Oh, my God. A false number. That's what President Trump called the World Health Organization's latest global death rate of the coronavirus. He also talked about having a hunch about what he thinks is going on.
Instead of the scientific numbers from the World Health Organization, he has a hunch. Willie, though, even more stunning than that is the fact that the President of the United States is telling people that they're going to get better by sitting around and, quote, going back to work with the coronavirus. This is exactly what is causing right now consternation up in New Hampshire, where a Dartmouth hospital employee was told to self-quarantine and instead went out that night to a school event. And now who knows how far it's spread. And you look at the New York case to see that one man has infected his entire family, infected the man who drove him to the hospital, who then affected his family. This spreads quickly and easily. So for Donald Trump to be saying, you can just sit around and get better, and, hey, you can even go back to work, is about as reckless and irresponsible as you can imagine. Let's hope the White House clarifies that later on today.
It's totally reckless. It's not a time for Donald Trump's hunches. It's a time for science. It's a time for doctors. It's not a time for Donald Trump to be calling into cable shows and riffing on things he doesn't know anything about. It's not a time for him to tell people to go back to work when every scientist and every doctor has said just the opposite. It's a time for the CDC. It's a time for the World Health Organization to be front and center, explaining to the country what this is, how this pandemic is taking hold, and what Americans should do about it. He even went so far yesterday, Joe, as to blame the Obama administration. Very vaguely, he said, we had to undo a decision they did. That's why our response has been so slow. No one seemed to know exactly what he was talking about. There was no decision to be undone. Joining us now from the White House, NBC News White House correspondent Jeff Bennett. Jeff, good morning. Let's talk about the president calling into Hannity last night and just riffing on a global pandemic that Dr. Fauci has said will become a pandemic at some point. Is there any strategy? Is there anyone in the White House who could say to Donald Trump, and I know this has sort of become a moot question over the years, but is there anyone who can say, hey, this is too important for you to be riffing off the top of your head?
Well, look, if someone is telling the president that, it's clear he's not listening. Remember last week when we reported that the vice president's office was going to use a heavier hand in controlling all of the coronavirus messaging coming out of this White House? Well, then, as it is now, it appears President Trump himself is the main one spreading disinformation, completely contradicting the information and the data put out by public health experts. The president disputing the 3.4% data-driven assessment of the overall coronavirus death rate, saying it's a false number, offering no evidence to back it up, only saying it's a hunch. He's also completely discarding, as you rightly point out, the advice from public health experts to people saying, if you feel sick, stay at home. President Trump saying that people have gone to work and then somehow gotten better. He also said that there's been a death reported in New York. There have been no deaths reported in New York from coronavirus. There has been that case that Joe mentioned. So clearly the president is trying to put a rosy sheen on things, trying to reassure the public that the administration has it under control, but he's doing it in a way where he's spreading disinformation. That said, though, public health experts do say the administration is doing a couple of things right, in part in naming Debbie Birx, the Obama appointee, the State Department ambassador at large. She brings 30-plus years of real-life experience. She is described to me as being someone who is serious, sober-minded, a real professional. She is now coordinating the day-to-day coronavirus response. I've talked to people who say that they hope that she's fully empowered to do the job. You've got Mike Pence going to the 3M headquarters today. This government has contracted with 3M to make more of those masks. He's then later going to head to Washington State, which has been grappling with the coronavirus outbreak there, too, Willie.
All right, NBC's Jeff Bennett at the White House. Jeff, thank you very much. Yeah, Mika, the point is there are really good people working on this. They've put some good people, some smart people, some experienced people in place. But when the president calls into a cable news show, that swamps all the facts and all the data and all the science that is there.
Yeah, absolutely. Still ahead, we're going to speak.
If we can say this also, Mika, it's also important. We actually have, I won't say a roadmap to how we better contain this virus, but there are countries that have dealt with this. China, of course, dealt with it in a heavy-handed way, but apparently, if the numbers can be trusted, the number of infections are going down. You see what's happened in Singapore. You see what's happened in Japan. You see what's happening in Italy. There is an aggressiveness where people are being isolated, where schools are being closed down, where things are, the governments are taking fairly aggressive actions, and it is stopping an epidemic from becoming a pandemic, at least at this point. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but we can learn by what's already been going on in China, the mistakes that they made. And one of the mistakes they made was a lack of transparency. They weren't straightforward. They kept trying to downplay the epidemic. And because of it, they're facing a crisis that could explode into a pandemic that could ravage their country. Look at Iran. Iran's having a terrible time because, once again, the Iranian government simply cannot tell the truth to the public in Iran. They are incapable of truth-telling. And because of it, you see the epidemic ravaging their leadership ranks in Iran. The United States of America should be able to learn from the mistakes of China and Iran. Should be able to learn about the proper way to do it. I know that Donald Trump is not capable of doing that, but for the love of God, I am hopeful that Vice President Pence and other healthcare officials in that administration, that people close to the President of the United States can ask him at the very least to back up and back off, because there are a lot of conservatives. There are a lot of older Americans who voted for Donald Trump before and who will vote for Donald Trump again.
Heck, they go to his rallies.
Who will go to his rallies, who will hear from their doctors and understand that what the president is saying is reckless and false and could put their lives in danger. So there's no political upside to lying about or downplaying this epidemic. And the net result of that is turning an epidemic that can be controlled into a pandemic that races out of control across the globe and kills far too many Americans and other citizens across the world.
Great way of making that point. And
thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.